Hey there, this is Amanda with Preparing Hearts at Home, and it has been forever since I have done a video just because of regular life stress and pandemic stress and all of that crazy stuff. But today I thought I'd do a quick video to give a bit of a review for the Simply Charlotte Mason History, Bible, and Geography Guide. I know the last video I made, or at least I think it was the last one, I mentioned that we were no longer going to be using Heart of Dakota, but that we were switching to Simply Charlotte Mason because of the more family style learning that their guides offered. So this past year, the 2019-2020 school year, I had 3 kids in school, a 4th grader, a 2nd grader, and a 1st grader. And so we used the Early Modern, and I think it's called Early Modern and the Epistles guide from Simply Charlotte Mason. It's the dark blue guide they have. And so I've got my little handy list here. If you see me looking down, I wrote down some notes so that I wouldn't forget to mention anything. But I thought the way I'd go about doing this would be to tell you things that seemed like pros and things that seemed like cons to me. Now this is totally just my opinion, of course, and every homeschool mom has a different personality and a different way of going about things. But for me, I would say that I'll list the pros first. And so one of the greatest things that really drew me to Simply Charlotte Mason's history guides was the fact that it's family style. So all of your kids, you can be teaching, you know, any grade level you have, or any number of kids you have, you can teach them all together. And so each grade level or form just basically goes a little deeper, has more, you know, heavy reading, more writing assignments, and those sorts of things. So I would say for sure that was the biggest pro for me, was that it was family style learning. And so this year, or I'm sorry, this past year, I had my 2 younger daughters were in Form 1, and then my oldest was in Form 2. So since Simply Charlotte Mason is Charlotte Mason based, they go by form. Now, Charlotte Mason in her schools, she used 6 different forms. And so, I guess once you got to be middle school through high school, it was, you know, sometimes there'd only be 1 grade in a form. And so Simply Charlotte Mason kind of simplified that a little bit to make 1st through 3rd grade is Form 1, 4th through 6th grade is Form 2, 7th through 9th is Form 3, and 10th through 12th is Form 4. So that definitely simplifies it a little bit. But as you progress to the higher forms, then your child is required, like I said, to do more reading and more writing, and has a lot more independent work. So at the same time, though, you can be, you know, the whole family can be reading the spine, the history spine together, and then each form would be responsible for reading, you know, their extra readers. Like this year, some of the books we read for American history for Form 1, my 2 younger daughters, were, you know, Sarah Morton's Day and Samuel Eaton's Day and Tappanum's Day. And I think one of the later ones we read in the school year was Tolliver's Secret, which was a huge hit at our house. But those were some of the books that we read for them. Now I read those to them. They didn't read them themselves. And then for my Form 2 daughter, who was in 4th grade this year, really she's an independent reader, so she could have been reading it all to herself. So that's another way that would make it more independent, as she could have been doing all of her history reading to herself. But I really was interested in the books, and you know, I didn't feel like it was going to take that much more time, so I read them to her. And we read the story of Napoleon, and let me think. Oh, I can't even remember. Isn't that terrible? I can't remember off the top of my head. The last one we did was the story of Napoleon, and that was really interesting. And also for that guide, you have Stories of the Nations and Stories of America Volumes 1 that goes along with it. So the next pro would be all of the wonderful reading, you know, all the wonderful living books that you read. There's a bunch. So if you go on their website and you click on the history guide that you're interested in, they have the free book list. I know some curriculum charges you for their book list, which, you know, is reasonable because they put all the work into creating a curriculum. But on Simply Charlotte Mason's site, you can get the book list for each of the history guides, which is really helpful if you're planning and trying to purchase books used, or just get an idea of what you're going to need in the future for that. We read A Good Queen Bess and The Bard of Avon, so we read a lot of stuff this year. That's why I'm having trouble remembering every single one. And another thing is, since I was reading it to my daughters, I can't remember, okay, was that Form 1 or Form 2? But anyway, go on their site and you'll be able to, you know, get access to their book list and figure that out. The next pro would be the open and go-ness, if that's a word. The fact that it was really open and go is super helpful, just because homeschooling is a full-time job in itself, but it's not the only job you usually have as a homemaker, especially, you know, if there's lots of littles running around your house at the same time, like my house here. So I really appreciated that you open it up, and, you know, it was laid out for you to just know what to do that day. And so their guides were just set up daily, I guess you could say. So like they were just consecutive lessons. So if you started school and you have a 5-day school week, you could do lessons 1 through 5 that first week. But if you have a doctor's appointment or some other kind of calamity happens and you're not able to get to it, well, then you just pick up lesson 5 the next Monday. So it wasn't really rigid in that you had to do every single subject on day 1, and if you miss something, oh boy, there's some stress because now you're gonna have to put that on day 2. It wasn't like that at all. So it was set up really nicely like that, where you just pick up the next lesson, you know, on the next day that you do school. I would say the next pro for me was how beautiful and high quality all of the resources were. So if you're doing the history, Bible, and geography, you need the guide, but then you also, if you're going to do the geography portion, you're going to need the visits to guide. And so for early modern and the epistles, you're studying North American geography, and so you need the visits to North America guide. I know they recommend you have one for each of your students, but in the effort to save some money, I bought one, and so the map work that's in it, we didn't fill in the maps in the book. So since each of your children are supposed to have their own, they can fill in the maps where they label the provinces of Canada and the states in the United States and such. So we didn't do the labeling. I guess you could use tracing paper if you wanted as well, but we just I would open the Visits to North America book, and then we would just go over the states or provinces, and you also learn about Mexico as well. And then my kids, I would just kind of quiz them orally. So we didn't do it exactly how they have it laid out, you know, with the writing and the stuff in, but even still, my kids seemed to, you know, when I'd quiz them, they seemed to know where the different provinces and states and such were. For the history portion, they also have these portfolios called The Stuff They Left Behind, and that isn't 100% required. Like, you can obviously do the history portion with just the guide and all of the living books that go along with it. The Stuff They Left Behind portfolio is pictures on cardstock that's like laminated on the front, that will be pictures of the things that you're studying, like for that time period, which was like 1550 to 1850, there was pictures of the Taj Mahal and St. Peter's Cathedral in Russia, like the first calculator, the cotton gin. There's several, and obviously they would let you know how many pictures are in there on their website. And those are really high quality, kind of the same as their picture study portfolios. If you've ever used the Simply Charlotte Mason picture study portfolios, they're the exact same quality, same size, come in the same type of envelope. So that's really pretty and really high quality. Oh, I'm hearing noises. If you hear noises, there's like a little barnyard going on back here, and I'm hearing, I don't know, walnuts fall out of a tree or something. So anyway, those would be the pros that I could think of to list on here. And now to the cons, which I have definitely fewer cons. And I wanted to say too that any cons I have nothing to do with Sonia Schaefer or anybody else who works for Simply Charlotte Mason. I've heard Sonia speak in person, and let me tell you, she is incredibly inspiring and encouraging for a homeschool mom. And her podcast and YouTube videos are equally as inspiring and wonderful. So I love you know, Simply Charlotte Mason and the people who work there. But some of the cons and the reason that we won't be sticking with, or some of the reasons we won't be sticking with Simply Charlotte Mason this coming year. I can't say that, oh, we'll never go back, you know, I don't know what the future holds, but one of them was the 6-year history cycle. So, like when I picked up a Simply Charlotte Mason this past year, that was the first year we had tried it, we picked up where Heart of Dakota, like where we left off in history, in the American history cycle with Heart of Dakota. And so since I had a first and second grader, they really hadn't had any American history yet either. So I thought it was important to pick up kind of at the beginning of our own country. So that's why I went with the early modern and the epistles. But I'm not a fan of the 6-year history cycle that Simply Charlotte Mason uses. I know they have their reasons for doing it, but for me, we would have one more year next year, or this coming year, this 2020-21 school year, of modern times, and then we would cycle back to the beginning, and it was going to be 3 years of studying ancient history, and that is not my favorite time period. And I just thought, oh my goodness, 3 years of trudging through that, it just didn't sound appealing to me at all. And also, if you read Charlotte Mason, or if you're a Charlotte Mason purist, as they call it, she had a 4-year cycle where she, in Form 1, she covered the child's own country's history, and then in Form 2, they would branch out a little bit to like a neighboring country, or a country that's closely related to your own country, and then also add in ancient history, like as a separate stream in the same school year. And for me, doing it that way seemed a lot more interesting and exciting. So, and I'm not sure if I mentioned that Charlotte Mason had a 4-year history cycle as well, not 6. So the biggest con for me would be the 6-year history cycle that Simply Charlotte Mason used. This school year, the history, I have no cons about what we learned in history or how it was presented or anything like that. It was very interesting, and my kids, all 3 of them, they really were interested in it, and they could narrate what they were reading because it was exciting, and we just learned a lot. So it was really good history year this past school year. But like I said, I'm not a fan of the 6-year cycle, so that kind of prompted my interest in maybe seeing if there was a Charlotte Mason curriculum out there similar to Simply Charlotte Mason, but was, you know, more closely aligned with how Charlotte Mason did things, with the 4-year cycle, and then adding the separate streams in as you got to like Form 2. Also, a con for me was the geography and the Bible portion of the guide. It wasn't as interesting for us, and it didn't really work as well for us, for my kids. Now, once again, I had 2 Form 1 and 1 Form 2, which was first, second, and fourth graders. And so for that young age, I thought the Bible was at times just too much over their head. Like, I was doing all of the Bible reading, which is fine, but it was, you know, a lot of passages, or you know, a pretty good sized passage, which in the guide I do remember they would say, you know, you can just focus on these verses if the whole passage is too much. And not that we don't read the Bible to our kids, you know, at all. It's not that. It's just that it just seemed really dry for my kids' age. Now, for you know, an upper Form 2, like maybe a 6th grader, 5th or 6th grader, through all the upper forms, it would be completely fine, because they would be studying it themselves. I guess you could call it like a really good inductive Bible study, which is great for older kids, but it just kind of, I'm not sure if it really, you know, we hear that we're saved by hearing the Word of God, so obviously my children were hearing the Word of God, which is wonderful, but it just seemed to be like a bit of a drag the day that we had to do that. It was hard. It made school hard for me, because I felt like I I wasn't like leading them to a feast. I was kind of like dragging them along, and I didn't like that. Also, the geography portion, the visits to North America, I didn't find that to be really super engaging. Not as much as I had found the history portion to be. So, I don't know, it wasn't terrible or anything. And like I said, we didn't use it exactly how, you know, Simply Charlotte Mason recommends, by each child having their own visits to North America book that they fill out. But like I said, the way we did it, I felt like was close enough to how they did it, by, you know, quizzing the kids and like having them identify the different things we were learning about. The Visits to North America book and all of the geography books, they have living books that you read along with Material World and Hungry Planet, which are big picture books. Now, I will say my kids did like those. They did enjoy looking at the different families, you know, across the world that we had studied anyway. What's really, I guess we didn't really do across the world because we were doing North America. So we did like families in Greenland and the United States and Mexico. They really did enjoy that portion of the geography guide, getting to see like what they ate and the furniture that they had, all their belongings from the Material World guide. But, you know, those kind of, that, I don't know, I don't want to sound harsh, but that portion of it was a con to me. So though the history was wonderful, but the Bible and geography parts, they just weren't really a hit for me this year. And they seemed, my kids kind of seemed like they could take it or leave it. You know, it didn't really engage them as much. So for this coming school year, my kids will be in fifth, third, and second grade. And then my little guy, he'll be starting kindergarten, which we do way like kindergarten compared to like when I started with my first daughter and second daughter. We did a lot more of a formal program with them, and I've kind of learned better since then. I don't really do that anymore. But he'll be allowed to tag along with whatever reading we're doing and whatever he'd like to take part in. But what we're going to be using this coming year is a gentle feast. I had seen a gentle feast at least the very beginning of this year, but like the cost of it kind of put me off at first because I really wasn't considering, you know, what's included in their curriculum, you know. And like with Simply Charlotte Mason, their guide is like $20, I believe. And so it seems like, oh, that's so cheap, but then you got to think you have to buy the Visits to North America book, and then if you want the picture study, or not the picture study portfolio, but the stuff they left behind portfolio. So it all adds up, and so it ends up being very similar. A Gentle Feast is different in that it is a 4-year cycle, which I love, and it is family learning. Like, she does schedule all 4 forms in the guide so that you can easily, you know, follow along with that. And it's a full curriculum. It's similar to Heart of Dakota in that it includes everything except for math. They give you a math recommendation, but it's not, you know, scheduled in the guide. But they do have like literature, science, history, geography, citizenship, everything. And it's very much true to Charlotte Mason's programs of how she did it in her schools. So I was really drawn to that, and I started kind of researching it more back in May, I guess it was, or April or May, you know, during all this pandemic stuff when we're all kind of stuck at home going crazy. But I don't know, after looking at it the second time around and not considering what all it included, I thought, well, you know, the cost really isn't, you know, it's not exorbitant at all. So that is the curriculum we're going to be going with this coming year, and I'm really excited to start that. I've got all of my books purchased, used. I know a lot of homeschoolers are, you know, at their library regularly, and we're not like that, partly because when we first started homeschooling, we only had 1 vehicle, and so I didn't get to go anywhere during the week because my husband was at work. So I just never got in the habit of leaving the house during the week or going to the library or running errands. And so, you know, that just never sounded appealing to me once we've got a vehicle, which last year was the first school year we had our own vehicle during the week. So, but also we like to build a legacy library that we can pass down to our kids. So I don't feel like any living book is not a waste to purchase, you know, to me. So, and if we're able to do it, I want to do it as long as we're able. And I always find everything used for the most part anyway. So I'm not really spending a whole lot. I see some people spending like $400 a year on curriculum for one kid, and I've never come close to that. So, but anyway, I think I'll do a separate video on that. Obviously, I can't review a Gentle Feast yet since I haven't used it, but maybe I'll do a video about kind of like a flip through. Now, they're a little different in that you can't go on their website and see the whole book list for the year. She does have an option where you can purchase it for $5. But once you purchase the curriculum, obviously, then you get the whole book list. So that's kind of what I did. Other than that, you can see samples of each cycle's book list, which kind of gives you an idea of what you'll be studying and so forth. I do, with science with A Gentle Feast, I love that they take a living book approach to science, and I love that. I think that's wonderful. This past school year we tried Apology of Science. I had heard, rave reviews about that. And so for the first term of this past year, we did the Apology of Astronomy, and I just found it to be kind of dry. I was kind of surprised because how many good things I heard about it. And so from there, I thought, well, I need to do a more living book approach. And I found Sabbath Mood Homeschool. So for the rest of the school year, the second and third term, that's what we did this past year. But anyway, that's kind of off the topic here. But anyway, if you have any questions about Simply Charlotte Mason, or I guess even a Sabbath Mood Homeschool for Science, since I mentioned that, just let me know and I will do my best to answer them. I don't think I left anything off of my list, so I think Simply Charlotte Mason works for a lot of people, and I know a lot of people love it. And like I said, I love Simply Charlotte Mason, the company, and Sonia Schaefer. It's just, I just kind of wanted a shorter amount of cycles, and I was not thoroughly impressed with the geography and Bible portion for the younger forms anyway. But anyway, I hope this is helpful for somebody, maybe give you a glimpse into what it's like for someone who's used it. And like I said, this is just my opinion, and some people might love the 6-year history, or yeah, the 6-year history cycle. And like I said, Simply Charlotte Mason, they do have I like blog posts about why they chose to do a 6-year history cycle. So if you go on their website and search that, or like the group on Facebook and search for that, they can give you the reasons why, and it might resonate with you, and that might be something that you would like. But this is just my own opinion, so take it for what it's worth. But I hope you enjoy this video, and I hope that you're enjoying your summer and you're excited about gearing up for the next school year. But I will talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.